I'm really excited today because someone from my past has arrived at LST. So this is Rhys Stenner, and Rhys, welcome to LST. I'm really excited that you're here. Rhys and I were students many years ago, graduating in 1985. Yeah. What's it like to be back?
It's really great to see you. You haven't changed a bit.
Surely I have.
Well, it's great to see you. I mean, I've followed your story over the years as well, and it's great to see how the Lord's using you. But it's quite special. I'm sorry Louise isn't with me. I've got a trusted colleague who has travelled with me. But where we're staying, we look out onto an oak tree there, and I remember sitting there with Louise, and we married 2 months afterwards. So I got a good blessing after leaving what was then LBC, now LST.
Yeah.
So it's good to be back.
That's great. So in terms of the training that you received at LST or LBC back then, we were moving between the LBC and the LST thing, I think. What would you say were the most important influences, looking back from where you are now? How did LST, LBC, train you or equip you or prepare you for the kind of ministry that you went on to have over the years, would you say? Well,
first of all, obviously it's a theological college, and theologically so helpful that we were taught it's the Word. You read the Bible in context, but it's the Word of the God, and I think we were really well trained to be biblical, and you had to make sure that your case came from the Scriptures. So, and that stayed with me, and I was always told that it's not like you go to a theological college and you kind of learn stuff. You're really given the tools to be a lifetime learner, and as someone who's preached the Word the last 35 years, you just got to go through the disciplines of seeking the Lord and going through the passage, preaching expositionally. So that was a huge foundation. Then in terms of ministry, the kind of I guess you call it ministry track now, but there was a sensitive thought to those who were called to be in pastoral ministry. I think we were taught the basics of how to shepherd a flock, how to declare the Word, how to conduct worship, and also do the work of the evangelist. I think we were encouraged to be in the world and to get out there and Bible in one hand, newspaper in the other. So I think in terms of theology and ministry, I think one thing that just struck me since just being here and hearing the echoes of the past around is actually there was a very healthy devotional life, and I saw that in you and so many of the team, so many of us who are here. There was a sense like you need to start the day with the Lord. There was regular prayer taking place here, and seasons when the prayer meeting was strong, when it was really weak. But I think devotionally it made a difference, and of course finding a wife, she's been a brilliant ministry partner, and so much influence. I'm very grateful.
Yeah. Did you think you were going to become a Baptist pastor when you were a student here, or did that emerge later on?
Kind of, yeah. When I was 14, I got saved when I was 14. We didn't go to church before that. A punk rocker led me to the Lord, and so we started going to this local church, Timoth Baptist, and God was moving in power. It was a great story, and so my pastor really encouraged us to use our gifts. That's when I started playing the guitar, like you did as well. And but I watched this newsreel of Billy Graham. It's Eurofest 1975, like a few years later. I watched it in the church hall on one of those old cine newsreels, and I remember just going like, oh, I'm going to do that. And it wasn't like I want to do that. I didn't notice the crowds or anything. I just thought that's the message. Right. And I didn't know that was even an option to do what he did. And then everyone said, well, like, you're going to be a pastor. And the punk, everyone said, he's going to be an evangelist. Okay. And so I came here with a sense of being trained for pastoral ministry. So when options appeared, I was like, yeah, I'm supposed to do that one. So additionally to the degree, we had pastoral diploma or evangelism diploma.
Which one did you do?
I did the pastoral.
Okay.
And so I found that, so Louise did the evangelism one, which is good.
I did the evangelism.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Well, we were encouraged. They taught us how to do a communion service and visit a crematorium. That was interesting. Yeah. We'd visited an industrial complex and spent a day with a hospital chaplain. Industrial chaplain. Right. So we were given good experiences like that.
That's great. And yeah, that was alongside the degree, though, wasn't it? It wasn't actually
Yeah.
integrated at that stage. I think subsequently things changed. Yeah.
I think it was a really good. The total experience gave us a good training on how to be an all-rounder. Not so much leadership. If that were a separate subject, I
Okay.
would say not so much that in my experience there, except that you saw how leaders operated, and I guess you're learning along the way. But I kind of had to pick some of that stuff up along the way, probably.
Right. Yeah.
But you can't do everything in 3 years.
No,
And
absolutely
it's a
not.
theological college, so
Yeah.
really, really helpful to me. And I try to keep up my Greek.
Oh, good for you. That's great.
Just a little.
It was compulsory in our day.
I know.
Which it isn't compulsory anymore, but I
Dick
think
France was it? Did you do it with Dick
Yes,
France?
yeah.
My goodness, he was brilliant.
he
wasn't
was brilliant.
And an
Yeah.
encouraging man as well as a
Yes.
great theologian.
Yeah, he was great. So you work in America. You lead a large church. We'll come back to that in a moment.
Sure.
But on this trip, so you
Yeah.
come back to the UK every 2 or 3 years, or every year, or how's that?
Actually, it's been like 2 or 3 times a year
Oh, really?
the last 16
Oh,
years, except for this. Did you know there's been a pandemic, by the way?
yeah. So COVID's kind of put
so
a few blocks on,
Yes,
on
it
the
was
travel.
February 2020. So, I mean, I hadn't seen my mum for almost a couple of years, so we
Okay.
we saw her for 3 days down in Teignmouth.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Now, while you've been here, you've been doing some chaplaincy work with a certain international sporting team. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
I've got no official standing.
Okay.
But that word might help people understand, I guess, what I do. But it's just no official standing. But I've really just become friends with the Welsh rugby team, and particularly since about 2009. So it's strange. Since I left Britain, my
Yeah.
grandfather played fly half for Wales, so that was always
Oh,
kind of in my
okay.
blood. And that
Right.
and being called Rhys, I don't know. They always just seem to be kind to me, and so.
Even though you don't have a Welsh accent.
Exactly. So I don't know. They know what I do, and so I've been to training. I don't know, 20 or 30 times. Been on the team bus, which is kind of cool, and just spent a few days there this week. And so training was really good. It rained both days,
Right.
and we went along to the match. And I go and see some of the commentators afterwards, and there's a number. Especially former players who've come to know the Lord. I've been praying for them for about 30 years.
Right.
Some of them come to stay in our house, and they're actually in our church's Sports Hall of Fame, which is another story in itself. But so yeah, I've got to know some of the very well-known Welsh rugby players, the coaches of the last 10 years, the British, some of the British Lions
Oh,
set
right.
up.
That's exciting.
So
Yeah.
it's been a great privilege, and so I don't get all preachy there, but I know of a couple of believers now in the squad, and in senior rugby there is some influence there. So it's a privilege to be involved in that. It's a miracle to me, because only God could do that kind of thing. You leave the country and He opens up doors
Right.
here. And of course the Welsh churches, we've been doing a lot of work with them for the last 20 years or so,
Right.
encouraging particularly the valley, some of the tougher
Right.
situations where it's very unchurched. But we've seen attitudes shift, and we believe we've shared the gospel with about 130,000 folks in
Wow.
that time, with our choir and in schools and stuff.
So do you see, I mean, at the heart of your ministry is kind of mission, really? Do you see yourself as very much a kind of evangelist, or I mean, how do you think about your role in terms of gifting and calling, principally?
Yeah.
What do you see yourself?
Well,
Nice.
I'm the senior pastor at New Hope, and I was senior pastor at Holland Road in Brighton before that, and so I'm the pastor of a church. But I would say Holland Road and New Hope, we're a gospel machine in that sense. That's how we like to see ourselves. So we've had seasons at Christmas when we've had 12,000 people come along. We see 1,000 come to know the Lord, and so that thrills our hearts. When we go on missions across the world, I think we're a good fellowship at harvesting. We kind of
Right.
that's part of who we are. But I mean, discipleship is the heart of our church. Small groups, all every age, from children through to we call them the students instead. We tend to say youth ministry here, but student ministry is what they say in America.
Right.
So, but yeah, I'd say that's a burning heart actually of my predecessors as well. They were great gospel declarers. So that's very much who I am. Tell people about Jesus. And so rugby's like, you can have a human passion. I know you're a runner, you're a musician, God can use those things along the way. It's not necessarily the thing that defines you.
Right.
So rugby doesn't define me, but it's just a ministry that has grown from that. But obviously my main focus is telling people about Jesus, growing the church, everybody finding their place in the body, and being a serving machine, in the community and in the world.
Okay, well, tell me a little bit about the whole mega church thing, because of course we don't have that many mega churches in the UK compared to America. I did a little bit of a study some years ago on mega churches. You may or may not know this.
I did not know that.
There's about 3,000 mega.
You're starting to frighten me now.
There's about 3,000 mega churches in America. There's about 10 or 11 in London.
Okay.
And maybe 12-ish in the country. So a mega church typically is defined as a church that attracts over 2,000 for the purposes of worship every week. They don't have to be members, they just have to kind of go along, as it were. So tell me a little bit about this ministry that you have as a senior pastor of what is now a mega church. How big is the mega church and how does it work? And because there'll be people here who don't really know, or watching this, who don't really have any experiences of so-called mega churches.
Yeah, and obviously mega means big.
Yeah.
But when I was in Brighton with 450, 500 people, that would have been a bigger church. There was one church that was bigger, and that was Church of Christ the King there, and we became friends with them. And so, but New Hope has been going for 140 years. For the first 100 years, it was a very rural community. There was one family every 100 acres.
Right.
And so this was a loving fellowship that went through the Depression and World War II, and then the Atlanta airport starts growing. It's 25 minutes away from our North Campus, and suddenly there's one person every 5 acres, then one person every acre. And so you get this rapidly growing community. So the church started to really grow. And it was in an era when suddenly it was like you didn't have to just plant a separate church 2 miles down the road. Why not just stay together? So really it was a little church that just grew. So, and there are some that say, hey, we're going to set out, we're going to put a campus here, and even recently we've had 4 churches set up in our community, one of whom may be one of the most well-known attractional ministries in the land. I think our approach is very different. It's discipleship, it's being in community with each other. We sometimes would say we're the largest small church in America. We've got our own graveyard still, which is usually a sign of a really old church. But then we second campus was planted 22 years ago, and so we became multi-site, as they say in America. I say multi-site.
That's right.
Before it was cool, there were only 2 other churches doing that, and so when I came to New Hope 16 years ago, I preach at the South Campus, and then I preach at the North Campus. That goes out on the radio, about 22,000 listeners for that. And obviously then we got into live stream before COVID, a few years before that, and putting it out on media and everything. We planted a 3rd campus just before COVID, 3 months beforehand. And so, yeah, we're part of a mega metro fellowship because we're about 1,500 in family groups. That's in your small group every week.
Okay.
And so, but we only just qualified for that. We've dipped below that during COVID, like everybody has. And so we joked when we last met at Mega Metro, we shouldn't call ourselves Mega Metro, but Mini Metro. But there are some massive churches, like Jack Graham is a dear friend. He has 37,000 members down in Dallas. Everything's bigger in Texas. We have 7,000 members, except, I haven't even checked where we are post-COVID on that. But we're seeing the comeback, so we're about 1,200 in family groups every week. Okay. And so, the returns, it really improved since April in particular, and so that's been nice to see that going. So we've got 94 different family groups and age groups, and so our ministries, especially through the volunteers, and so someone asked a question to me earlier in college today, how do you do church discipline? Saying actually it's especially within the family groups, and often what happens is that someone just disappears, and there's almost like a self-discipline that takes place whereby the family group leaders is chasing them up, and it's like you can get ghosted very easily, and that's one of the dangers, that you can just go to the church down the road with unresolved issues, and that happens a lot in our community. So it's not like, and I didn't want to go like, ooh, let's go to a big church. I was very happy in Brighton. We were happy. we live by the sea. We've been there 13 years. We were experiencing the blessings of longevity.
Right.
We were neighbours of Paul McCartney. I would see him from time to time. But then we were very happy there. But we were in partnership with New Hope for about 8 years.
Okay.
We did missions together, they called us. And we really prayed it through with our elders and felt we were supposed to do this. Gulp. So you know what that's like, moving to another culture.
Mm. And it is quite different, isn't it? I mean, being a Brit in America, you are slightly odd, aren't you?
Definitely.
Yeah. What are the main cultural things that you found challenging, shall we say?
I think first of all the language, because we're very proud of our language and we say it right, isn't?
Of course,
everything we do is correct.
And the spelling's correct as well.
Yes. Well, I was never a good speller, so I get away with that. But so spell check, praise the Lord. But I would say I've had to drop about 1,000 words and add 1,000 words to my vocabulary.
Right.
If you want to be comprehended, you just have to do that. Now, someone like Alistair Begg, he seems to be like, it's as if he's still at Charlotte Chapel.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? He seems to have, there are some that just stay exactly as they are. I think just he's in Cleveland, Ohio, so in the South, I think we've had to adapt more culturally.
Mm.
So, everything is different. Everything is different. And so our kids have been brilliant.
So tell me about your family. How many kids do you have?
Got 3 girls.
Okay.
Megan is married to Alex, who's our South Campus student pastor.
Okay.
They were in a terrible wreck around Easter time, and the Lord's brought them through. Eleanor is 28 years, the same as your Becky. 28 years old. She's in Birmingham, Alabama. That's different to Birmingham. And
Yeah,
she's very strong in a church, and she's a professional photographer. She's amazing. And our Sarah's getting married. She's our baby. She's 22, marrying a trainee pilot who's 6'5".
Wow.
She's our sporty girl. So again, they're strong. They go to the North Campus right now. So.
Oh, that's great. So if you were going to give some advice to a would-be student, so someone is interested in exploring Christian ministry, they want to grow in their spiritual life, they want to discern God's call upon their life, and they're thinking of coming here. Right? In light of all that you have experienced, both as a student and then subsequently in various ministries, what would be the key pieces of advice that you might give to someone thinking of coming to a place like LST?
I think it's really important to actually look at the statement of faith and to realise that this is who the college is. And I checked it out again the other day, and I'm like, it's so crucial for yourself, the staff, the team to keep that before us, that here's a community that's strong in the Word. It's not a church. Everyone is expected to go to church, but come here and expect it to be a challenge. Expect it to be brilliant at the same time. I remember thinking like, I'm going to have to just like study for 3 years and do nothing else. Didn't realise that actually it's the friendships and the mentoring that's like most of the fun almost. And so I would say expect it to be really, really good and to have a very meaningful encounter with God. I think the devotional life here has had a really good tradition of helping us grow. But know why you're doing it. I think I know there's education for education's sake, but if you have a sense that God is preparing you for something, I think that's a good reason, especially to come to college. Of course, there are those that will come to be theologians, as it were. I'm a fan of practical theology as well, and I think you've held attention in your ministry by putting it into practice and being a great student as well.
Yeah, that's great.
A life learner.
Great. Well, it's been great to chat to you today, Rhys, and thank you for coming back. And I hope you'll visit again. And so I wish you every blessing on your return to the state. You're travelling back tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I hope that journey goes
seeing
well.
Everybody. I've missed Louise. I'm looking forward to seeing her again.
Right. Of course. So I look forward to keeping up the connection with you and seeing what happens.